We return to describe the procedure for cutting metal conduit. Although it is a common practice to use a hacksaw for cutting conduit, a more professional and accurate cut is made by means of a tube cutter. Whichever cutting method you decide to use, metal conduit should be held in a pipe vise when you work on it. When using a hacksaw, we recommend that you make a ring mark or place a piece of tape on your cutting position. The edge of the tape acts as a guide for the saw blade. Keep the cutting position as close as possible to the vise, but leave enough room to operate the hacksaw or the tube cutter without restricting the action. Tighten the vise handle firmly, but not excessively, to secure the conduit. If you over-tighten the vise, you run the risk of distorting the conduit. Use long, steady strokes when cutting with a hacksaw. Keep your eye on the cutting line or the edge of the tape in order to make a nice, squared-off cut. If you decide to use a tube cutter, then observe the following tips. First, adjust the cutting wheel so that the cutter fits over the conduit. Carefully align the cutting wheel with the cutting mark. Next, adjust the cutting wheel down until it just touches the conduit, and then begin to rotate the tool. It is very important that you rotate the tool in one direction only. Rotate the cutter around the conduit and adjust the wheel pressure gradually as you rotate the tool. Do not stop the rotation as you make these small adjustments. This is to avoid damage to the cutting wheel. Continue to do this until the wheel has cut through the metal. A neat and square cut will result from this method. If you have made your cut using a hacksaw, there is always the chance that the cut may not be square. Square off the end if necessary using a suitable flat file. Both cutting methods will generate a burr within the tubing. This must be removed, or you will run the risk of tearing the cable insulation when the wire is drawn through later on. We shall deal with the method of reaming or deburring later. Let us now look at the procedures for threading metal conduit. Threading is necessary to attach adapters and connectors. In preparation for this, the external burr, normally left after a hacksaw cut, must be filed off. Threads are cut onto metal conduit using dies. The die is supported and held within a stock. The conduit to be threaded is held firmly in the pipe vise, as it would be for cutting. Next, we must assemble the stock and die required for the 20 mm conduit that we are using here. We begin by selecting the 20 mm guide and the 20 mm die. The guide is first fitted into the stock body. Next, the die is installed. Make sure that the indents, which locate the retaining nuts, face upwards as demonstrated. Secure the die with its retaining nuts. Fasten these retainers securely by hand only. Fit the handles if not already fitted. The tool is now ready for use. Next, apply a little thread cutting paste to the end of the conduit, as this will help create a clean thread. Carefully slide the stock onto the conduit. Apply a gentle forward pressure on the handles and begin turning the stock in a clockwise or right-hand direction. Continue to apply pressure along with the turning action until you can feel that the dies have started to cut into the conduit. Keep the die turning and let it cut into the metal. After each full revolution of the stock, turn back slightly, about 1/4 of a turn. This will break off the metal shavings as they form in the die and will prevent the teeth from clogging. Continue to turn the die and give a back turn every revolution until the desired thread length has been cut. At this time, remove the die by turning it back until it clears the newly formed thread. The correct length of thread is obtained when the thread is 1 pitch less than the thread into which it is to fit. An old paintbrush makes an ideal tool to clean the threaded area after the cut has been made. A final check is made using a lock nut. The nut will, if you did everything correctly, thread easily and freely along the newly formed threads. Remember to clean the die before returning it to its pack. The next step in the process is to ream or deburr the conduit. After cutting of metal conduit, a burr, which is a sharp ridge, will be formed inside the tube opening. This ridge must be removed, or we run the risk of damaging the cable insulation when the wires are drawn through. The tool used to cut away the burr is called a tube reamer or deburring tool. A hand brace is used to drive the tool. The burr is removed simply by rotating the tool inside the conduit as demonstrated. Care must be taken to avoid removing too much material. The work is complete when you have an end that is square, well threaded, and contains no internal burr. Let us review the cutting, threading, and reaming procedure. Metal conduit can be cut with a hacksaw fitted with a fine blade. However, if you want a neat and square cut, then a tube cutter is the better tool to use. Before threading, make sure that the cut end is squared off and that the external burr is filed off. The end is threaded using the appropriate die. The die is secured into the stock. Thread cutting paste is applied before the thread is cut. The die is turned backward slightly after every revolution in order to clear the cutting teeth and prevent the die from jamming up. The completed thread is cleaned and checked. Finally, the internal burr or ridge is removed with the reaming tool.